Recently got a note from one of our fellow YouTubers saying that, hey, when I shoot in this kind of scenario where you have a black background, I'm getting lots and lots of noise in that black background. And wanted to know, hey, is there something wrong with my camera or my lens? And the answer to that is no, there's not. In fact, I get plenty of noise in my black background as well because the camera is attempting to pull as much information as it can out of there, especially if you're using a flat picture style, which I often do and recommend. So let me show you my process for actually crushing the blacks to get rid of some of that noise, and then kind of throw it back to you guys and see if you know of a better way to do it. Okay, I'm just going to show you quickly two different ways that I have crushed the blacks in my background. Again, this is not for every situation. This is only in cases where you have dark areas where you have no information, no detail, and you just want to clean them up. So a great example of that, of course, is the black background look that I often use in my videos. Now, first I'll show you Speedgrade, and then I'll also show you how I do this in Premiere. I think I like the Speedgrade method better. But again, this is not going to be an in-depth tutorial on either one of them, just a quick view of how I do this. And again, the idea is so you can apply this in whatever editor or color grading application you're using. So first of all, in Speedgrade, what I will do typically is I'll come in here to the shadows. Now I can affect the overall image, shadows, midtones, or highlights. I'm going to come into the shadows because it's really just the shadows I want to drop down. Now, on here it looks okay, but if you zoom in, go into 200%, you can see the black background is actually not entirely black. It's a little bit more grayish, very dark gray, but grayish and splotchy. So we want to clean that up. So the first thing I'll do is I'll come into the shadows and I'm going to drop my offset, which is going to be the darker areas. And it doesn't take very much. And also what I do is I keep my eye on the waveform over here. Now you can already see as I move this offset, watch what happens in the waveform. Those little shapes at the bottom of each of the color channels here, will actually drop below the 0 mark when we have this totally black. And so that's what's happened here. Now we'll zoom back out. And the thing is that you want to make sure you don't affect the tones on the rest of your image where you do want the detail. And so that's one of the risks. Now, the nice thing about Speedgrade is that I have this shadows threshold setting over here. And what I can do here is I can dial that down so that we're really only affecting the darkest parts of the image. And what's nice, of course, about that is that, again, we don't affect the tones on our actor or any other things where we want to maintain detail in the tones. So that's how I start that. And then I pop back over to the overall section or maybe the highlights. And I might bump some things up here. So, you know, again, I believe skin tones are typically in the 70 range here. And we're pretty close to that, but we might just... No, I think we're not going to bump that up. I think we're actually pretty good. We're going to go ahead and bump the contrast up a little bit. I shot with a flat picture style, so those kind of things will typically happen in flat picture style. You'll get some splotchiness on your black background because we're reducing the contrast setting in the camera, and to give us a little bit more potential dynamic range for when we're doing our color grading. But we want to punch that back up here in color grading, so we've got a nice contrasty background here. And actually you notice that these have dropped down more, so we can actually go back into our shadows and back off our setting a little bit. We don't need to crush them that hard. Okay, there we go. And then in here I might warm things up just a touch using the temperature and the final saturation, just bump that up some. So this is closer to what we're looking like here now. Nice clean black background, and what we haven't affected the tones on our actor too much. So that's about what that looks like. Once we get that thing, we can go ahead and scrub through it a little bit and just see how it's looking. And things are pretty good, pretty happy with that. So that's how I typically do it in Speedgrade. Now, the nice thing about Speedgrade is in addition to that threshold for the shadows, it's a full 32-bit color engine that it's using. So what that means is you can typically move things around a little bit better without messing up some of the other tones that you don't want to affect. So that's one of the things I really, really like about Speedgrade. Now, it's kind of a wonky interface. There's a lot to learn there, and I'm just beginning to play around with it, so I don't know it really well, but that's typically how I do it there. Now, switching over to Premiere, it's about similar, so I just put that same clip in here, and again, if we go ahead and zoom in on the footage here to 200%, same problem here. We've got that splotchiness, we've got our waveform monitor here, and again, you can see those shapes here at the bottom of each of the color channels, which represents the black background. We want to get that under 0. So the way we're going to do that over here is there are a couple of different ways. I typically will use the fast color corrector or 3-way color corrector. You could also use the levels control. The benefit with the color corrector, fast color corrector and 3-way color corrector, is that they're 32-bit. The levels control is only 8-bit. So ideally, I think it's better to, at least in theory, I haven't fully tested and I don't fully understand all of the details, but typically I think you want to stick with a 32-bit plugin or effect if you can. So what I'm going to do here is just go ahead and type in, let's do a color corrector, and we'll go ahead and just do the fast color corrector. We'll drop that on our footage here. Now once we've done that, I've got my effect controls here. And I'll just come down to the input levels. And again, this is if you've ever used the levels controls or tools in Photoshop, very similar. All we're going to do is we're going to crush our blacks by grabbing this little item here, this little arrow, and dragging that in. And I want to keep my eye on that waveform monitor again over here. And we want to get those items down to below 0. And it looks like right about in the 16 range seems to be doing a pretty good job. Now, the problem is if I've zoomed back out here and you see the whole image, this one seems a little harder. Whoops, we'll go ahead and make that fit. It's a little harder to work with because, so if I go back out, let's just start that over. I'm going to drag it in. We've got to about 16. If I go farther than that, watch what starts happening to the actor. You start really affecting that a lot. So this one is not as much finesse involved with this tool. It's a little bit more of a brute force tool, and you'll probably have to compensate. You might have to compensate a little bit by bumping up the white input level as well, maybe. And then again, you can finish that off with saturation as well. Because I'm using a flat picture style, I kind of I dial down the saturation when I'm actually capturing it on the camera, just to again try and give myself a little bit more to work with in post. So that's a similar type way you can do that over on the Premiere side. You'll have to kind of tweak it a little bit and work with it until you get just the right mix. And waveform monitors are super helpful in helping you, figure out whether or not you've actually crushed them, because everyone's monitor is a little bit different, and your monitor may not show that it's fully crushed, but other monitors may show. So hope you found that helpful. Now, I'd like to throw it out there. If any of you know of a better way to do this, or a way that seems to be working better for you, go ahead and share. I'd love to learn from any experience that you have and could potentially help all of us here. So thanks again for checking out the show. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and do that, and we will talk to you again soon.